Happy New Year's! In all honesty, I'm not a big fan of New Year's resolutions, and I believe you can change the course of your life at any given moment, but that's a different video. Nevertheless, a new year started 10 days ago, and I feel impressed to tell you guys about one of the biggest changes or new beginnings in my life. Sorry I didn't get a story time with Riptide out the last couple of weeks, by the way. There was just simply no way that that was going to happen. And I know that in my last story time with Riptide video, I had all these old builds in the background and stuff so that you guys could kind of imagine what I was saying. But this week I'm going to try something different. I'm just going to put it to random background of me playing something. Please tell me if it's significantly worse and if you thought that the little builds I did added a lot, because yeah, I'm going to play around with this series, see what works best. I've been pretty blessed my whole life with good health. I do not have any allergies or diseases, not even common mental diseases like depression, which are becoming much too commonplace these days. I don't get sick often, and I've never really broken any limbs. And by never really, I mean never broken any limbs. However, throughout my childhood, a certain sickness haunted me. When I was a mere youngling, a toddler, I would have seizures pretty often. I do not know how many I had, as I do not remember them because I was so young. In fact, I would not know I ever had any seizures aside from the two I'm going to tell you about in this video if my family did not tell me about them. Common symptoms of these seizures are high fever and uncontrollable muscle movement in my limbs, mainly being in my legs. My first seizure I have a memory of happened sometime around 2013, I think. I was sleeping on the floor that night in my sleeping bag. I must have felt like camping or something. I was dozing off to sleep and almost fell into the realm of sleep when I had a very strange sensation in my legs. I had no feeling in them, yet I also had a tingling feeling going on at the same time. I remember the eerie moment when I looked down to the end of my sleeping bag, and I saw the left side slowly elevate, and by that I mean very fast. And I looked over to the right, and I saw the right side elevate, and back and forth and back and forth, and continue in this way in a very fast fashion. I felt myself burning up with fever and desperately cried for help. The seizure stopped about what I remembered to be 10 minutes after they started. My parents told me that it was really only 45 seconds and seemed like 10 minutes because, well, obvious reasons. It was a very haunting experience. I had 2 additional seizures on the way to the emergency room in our local hospital. One in the car, the other while being carried out of the car. I seemed to be conscious the entire time, though my mother insists I dipped in and out. I guess I believe her because how would I know if I was unconscious? Long story short, I was able to be discharged from the hospital and walk out that same night. We were not too concerned about this at the time, as fever seizures are actually fairly common for children under the age of 10. I lived my life pretty happily until about 2015 or 2016. I was flying in a plane over a large canyon. No one was in the plane with me. Not even a pilot was flying the plane. It should have came as no surprise to me when my plane stalled and fell straight into the side of a canyon. My plane exploded and I fell seemingly endlessly into the canyon. Falling with such high velocity that the wind made my arms and legs fail, whip, and crack on my lengthy descent. I woke up. Thank goodness the dream was over. Thank goodness it wasn't real. Unless I quickly looked down at my legs. They were moving up and down, without me giving them permission to do so. I felt like my head was burning like a lava pool in the nether. I had been in this place before. I was having another seizure. Again, I was rushed to the hospital, having multiple episodes along the way. I wished I had not woken up. This experience was more miserable than the last. It was so miserable that I was wishing to be unconscious for the moments that I was conscious. I was 11 years old. My type of seizures were not supposed to be happening when I was this old. This meant that I probably was not having fever seizures, and that I unfortunately most likely had a disease called epilepsy. While having this in the back of my mind, I had woke up at about 1 a.m. that night, and I really needed to pee. Bad. I mean, duty calls in the middle of a war, am I right? I was not allowed to walk or even be carried to a restroom, so I was given a plastic container to pee in while I was in bed by a nurse. While I was in the middle of my business, I had my last seizure. This moment it's probably the lowest moment of my life, and trust me, I've had plenty. What a mess. I again walked out of the hospital that night just like last time, but something was much different. I had caught my haunting disease that night. You are probably assuming the disease I caught/noticed that night was what was causing the seizures. Quite to the contrary, the seizures had caused this disease. This disease slowly rises up in its hosts and consumes them. Eventually, all body functions and thoughts are controlled by the disease. The disease controls the body it is in to become a variant of an undead creature, hurtled up in a fetal position. The name of this disease was fear. Now, as I mentioned in the previous story time with Riptide, I was afraid of everything when I was younger. But this was different. It completely consumed my life. Every living minute after I walked out of that hospital. Prior to these events, I was able to go to bed at any time I wanted. Now, no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't fall asleep before 12 a.m. because I was worried if I went to sleep, I would have another episode. I would often wake up around 3 a.m. after having a nightmare or sleepwalking. During the day, I worried about developing a fever by working out in the hot sun, and I would stay worried sick all day about having another horrible experience. It got to the point where I wouldn't even listen to songs I know I listened to the day I had my seizure, because being afraid that the songs would bring it back. I was possessed by day and an insomniac by night. Fear kept me in a cage. I felt I could not escape. I was enslaved by fear. It had influenced decisions and constantly kept me on the edge. The fact I was having growing pains at the time was not helping either, as I often thought the sensations brought by growing pains were the pre-effects of seizures. After a year to half year of this, I was over it. I started to mentally combat fear. When you catch this deadly disease, you are left with no choice but to pull it out by the roots. I started telling myself fear had no control over me. I started to recognize that whatever happened would happen. If I had a seizure again, I made the choice I would take it as an opportunity to become stronger instead of looking at it as a setback. I threw fear out of the front door and told him never to return. But in reality, I would never have had the mental mentality this strong if I hadn't prayed. Some of you believe in God, and some of you don't, and that's fine. As for me, I believe in God. Because of my constant prayer, I know God not only protected me from seizures, but much greater, freed me from my fear. The complete 180 turnaround that happened to me may not seem like divine intervention to some of you, but if only you knew the prison of fear I was in, you would understand why I know it was. This is one of the main things that moved me to get baptized. I was only told by my doctor that if I continued having seizures after the age of 12, I was most likely epileptic, even though the tests they ran on me showed it was extremely unlikely that I was. Well, here I am 4 years later. I'm past the age of 12, and I have not had a seizure since, and hopefully it will never happen again. I hope this story helped to inspire you all. If you get one message out of this video, make it this: don't give fear an inch. He will take a mile. Thank you so much for watching this video, this story time with Riptide. Again, please remember to give me feedback about just some random game in the background instead of the builds. You guys like that better because it would help me to get these videos out a lot faster. But thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you all on the next wave.